I gave myself just 4 hours to finally get this garage under control. No fancy cabinets, no $5,000 remodel, just what I can do in an afternoon. Now, I did end up with a plan for a pretty dang decked out garage, but we'll talk about that some more in a future video. But now I'm gonna show you step by step how you can actually do the same in about 4 hours and how you can keep it that way, because this method is really unique. All right, I moved into this new house just a few months ago after some big life-changing events. And so now I've just moved in here with my kids, and I had a bunch of stuff that was extremely disorganized, stuff that came from my old house, stuff that came from my office, and things just everywhere. And the garage became the dumping ground. And so here I am trying to get my life together, and I can't hardly walk through the garage. So I decided it was finally time to get this done. Now, the problem with how most people go about doing this is that we tend to organize things like by category, right? We put all the lawn stuff with the lawn stuff. We put all the car stuff with the car stuff. And that seems like it makes a lot of sense, right? Because then you always know how to find what you're looking for. That's what I did at my last house, and it turned out to be a huge mistake. So now we're gonna completely flip the script. We're not gonna organize just by category, we're gonna organize by intent. See, the most important thing is to have really easy access and make it really easy to get out and put away the things that you're gonna use the most frequently. And then those things that we don't need to use very often, that stuff, we can put it kind of further away, a little bit harder to get to. That allows us to make the best use of the space that we have in our garage or in our shed or wherever we're doing this without having to unpack everything just to get to something, at least not very often. So we're gonna organize the entire garage into 4 overlapping zones based on 1, frequency, how often we need to use that stuff, 2, seasonality. There are some things that I may not need very often, but I need it every single year, like Christmas decorations. 3, how easy or how difficult it's gonna be to access those things. And 4, friction. Just if things feel annoying to have to either store or to have to get to when we need to use them. So zone 1 is our quick access stuff. Quick access doesn't go necessarily in one place in the garage, but this is the stuff that we can very easily, readily get to. It's not behind anything else, I can quickly grab it. This is stuff like dog food that's right by the door because I use that a couple times a day. It's the everyday tools. I use my impact and my drill, sometimes a hammer, and a few other things really often. Outdoor trash bags, extension cords, all that kind of stuff. And that stuff we're just gonna have really available. Oftentimes they're gonna be near the door, they're gonna be near eye level, they're just gonna have minimum barriers to be able to get to them. A few other things for me that fall into this category are things like tapes and adhesives. I use tape a lot, but I don't just use one type of tape. And I used to have a bin for my tape that went up on a shelf high in the garage. And then what did that mean? It meant that I also had masking tape strewn about the house. I had electrical tape in my toolbox. I had different tapes all over the place because I needed them more frequently than accessing that bin really allowed for. Now all my tape is just in this cabinet right here near eye level, and all of the tape is there. And every time I buy tape, that's where I'm gonna put it. A good rule of thumb for this stuff is if it takes more than one move to get these things, we put it too far away. All right, for zone 2, we're gonna move to the seasonal stuff. There's a lot of stuff that I'm gonna use seasonally. Some of it's gonna be things like decor, it's kind of obvious. Christmas stuff can go in a bin. I'm gonna pull it out once a year, and during that time, it's gonna be helpful to have that bin readily accessible. The rest of the year, I can dump it in the back and make it a little bit harder to get to. But that's not the only thing that's seasonal. I've also got a lot of lawn stuff, you know, yard tools and things that for half the year, I'm using all the time. But for the other half the year, I don't really need to be able to get to them very easily. For this stuff, in some cases, like the yard things, I'm just gonna put them all in a little yard shed. That will show in another video here as soon as it's done. But I'm building a little yard shed so that I can have the lawnmower, the trimmer, and most of my yard tools just in one place. Then they're very easily accessible during the time of year when I need them, and during the winter when I don't need them, they're completely out of the way, not blocking any of the other stuff I need regular access to. That's handy, but if you don't have a spot for a shed and you still have a lot of outdoor tools, then it could make sense to use this sort of a setup that we're gonna talk about now. So what we're talking about here is, for a lot of seasonal things, it makes sense to have sort of a rotational system. Now, I gotta show you this. I've got these bins up over my garage. In fact, in a video, we'll try to link to that here. I'll put links to these in the description too. But in a video I showed you building this setup. It was super cheap, by the way. I just looked today and I found a comparable system at Lowe's on their website for $460. And I think I spent like, I don't remember, maybe about 50 to build this myself. And it took a couple of hours. But what that allows me to do is store a bunch of these bins here over the top of my garage door. Now, the downside of this is that some of the bins are slid further in, and to get to them, I have to remove the ones that are further out. So what do? Well, the stuff that's seasonal can go further in, and the stuff that I need a little bit more ready access to, definitely not the everyday stuff, but the stuff that I need easier access to, that goes on the bins closer to the end. Now, one thing is like, let's say that I have 3 bins full of Christmas stuff, I can just put those all in the same row. That way, when it's time to get them down, I'm getting all 3 of them down and putting all 3 of them back up at the same time, which is another way to do it. But it's really simple, the idea being we're just gonna swap stuff from being out of reach to being in reach. Now, one thing I also did at my other house was we had a storage unit. If you have offsite storage, that's great, because with offsite storage, I can move the seasonal stuff away, and so it's just not in my garage at all. But then when the season comes, when it's time to put up the Christmas decorations, I go get those bins from storage, and then they stay in my garage for the next 3 months while we've got all of our Christmas decorations up. And then for every season, when I put the Christmas ones away, I'm getting out different ones, and we can just swap them out of the storage unit. But we can do the same thing in the garage by taking the stuff that's harder to reach, moving it forward, and shifting some things further to the back. And bins are a great way to do this and keep it really organized. Okay, zone 3. This is project tools. Now, again, it seems like it might make the most sense to categorize these by like the type of tool that it is, but not so much, right? Does it make sense to put all of my electrical screwdrivers with the square head with all of my other screwdrivers? Maybe if I use them all the time, but most of the time I just need Phillips, a flathead, maybe some Allens, right? Maybe some Torx as well, but I almost never need that square head unless I'm doing electrical. So all my electrical stuff can go together for when I'm doing electrical projects, with a couple of exceptions. There are a few electrical tools I use regularly enough, like a multimeter, a basic just electrical tester, the little light up one, some wire strippers. Those are about the 3 main things that I can just keep in my toolbox because I use them frequently enough. But then I don't have to keep all my electrical tools in the toolbox or in the electrical bin. So instead of organizing all water stuff together, plumbing stuff and sprinkler stuff all together, I can organize it with gardening stuff so that I have gardening stuff and the sprinkler parts in the same bin, because I'm gonna be using them the same time of year, or I'm gonna be using them when I'm doing the same kinds of projects. How are we gonna position these? These I'm gonna position usually a little bit less readily available than, the other stuff that we've talked about so far, but we're gonna position them together as kits. Now, this could be for projects, but it could also be for just other use cases. For example, I have a bin over here that's camping. It's like all the camping stuff. I mean, not the sleeping bags, but it's the other camping stuff. So it's stuff I'm gonna use together, stored more as a kit. Do the same thing for your project bins. If I'm gonna be painting walls in my house, what are all the tools that I need for that? Well, I also do that oftentimes at the same time as I'm making drywall repairs. So my paint stuff and my drywall stuff, I actually have together in the same bin. For this, can be great to use modular totes. I have some of those project bins up in the totes up here over my garage, as well as in other totes around the garage. You can use bins or just other like buckets where, again, they're kind of modular. It all sits together. That is gonna prevent me from having that situation I described at the beginning, where I was getting down 7 totes by the end because I needed, one thing from the paint bucket, another thing from the drywall bucket, another thing from the sanding bucket. No. My drywall sandpaper should not go with my other sandpaper. It should go with my drywall stuff. And then I can complete a project, put that bin away, and keep my garage organized. Okay, for zone 4, this is the archive. This is the stuff that you're gonna hold on to, but you don't use. But you can't really get rid of it because it's attached to memories or sentimental things, or maybe things you're holding on to for 10 years from now when your kids go to college. That kind of stuff, it doesn't need any sort of easy access, but you do need to be able to know where it is and how to get to it. That stuff we put on the highest shelves, we put furthest back on, on my overhead stuff. I've got a couple of bins back there like that. That's just stuff that I'm basically not using, but it's stuff I'm gonna hold on to because when I move out of this house, I'm probably gonna want it for the next one, or stuff for my kids. So here's what this actually looks like. What I found was the most helpful was to go through my garage and just kind of organize things. So first, I got stuff out of the garage that doesn't belong in the garage. There was a lot of that. Some of it was trash, but a lot of it was just stuff that was for the house. I can't tell you how often, even after living in a place for years, stuff that belongs somewhere in the house ends up finding a spot on the garage floor. I start by just kind of getting that stuff out of here to give myself a little bit of room to work. And then a little bit as I'm going through that stuff, I'm also sort of sorting things into the different zones that we just talked about. I'm sorting project stuff into sort of the kits that we talked about. And even now Even now, after I got my bins and stuff, I'm going through the toolbox and I'll come across something that belongs in one of those bins. Am I getting the bin down every time to put that one thing away? No, but what I am doing is I'm grouping things, I'm making little piles. And then maybe at the end of the week, I'll go through, I'll pull down the bins I need to and put all that stuff in there. And I'm finishing getting organized. Once you get the things sort of broken into categories, then it's time to decide how you're gonna store each sort of group of items. I have a lot of things that are just here on the shelves. I have sleeping bags. I could have put those in totes, but it's not a great use of space to go buy a couple of really big totes. It would just take up more space. The sleeping bags, I can just kind of shove on the shelf there and it's just fine. On the other hand, there's a lot of small items here in my camping bin that would be a pain to just store open on the shelf, and it makes a lot of sense to store those things in the camping bin. But as you'll notice, I have my sleeping bags, my tent's up there, my camping bin, and so all my camping stuff and fishing's right over there on the side. It's all right there together. Then once we decide how we're gonna store each thing, we need to decide which access zone this stuff belongs into. That way the archive stuff can go hidden in a back corner somewhere. I do have some things literally over in that corner, kind of by the water heater, that some of it is stuff that I know I'm not gonna use basically while I live in this house. But instead of going and getting a storage unit somewhere else, I'm just kind of putting it in the corner. So it's out of sight, out of mind. I still have it, but it's not blocking me from any of the other stuff that I use regularly. Likewise, I put some of it up on my over garage door storage, just as far back as I can. And some of it up high on these shelves. So I've got these big Costco shelves here we talked about in a video, and some of the things in the back corner are things I'm just not gonna need very often, maybe ever. Then we've got to decide how we're going to label things. That's one of the worst things. So I've got these 9 bins, right, overhead in my garage. Imagine if I'm like, oh, I need all the electrical stuff, I'm gonna do a project. Which bin is that in? And so what am I doing? I'm pulling down the front bin from each row. Nope, it's not in those. Must be the next row back. Next thing I know, I've pulled down 5 or 6 bins before I actually find the one that all my electrical stuff is in. I used to do that a lot. And because of that, I used to use clear bins, but the clear bins are usually not as strong. And so I didn't do that this time. Instead, here's what I did. For all my totes, I have these labels. This is a camping label, right? There's my rock climbing gear. And I just label it with these labels. Now, there are apps that will do this for you, that will print out labels. You can go buy the labels on Amazon. You have to buy their labels, right? Because that's what the apps are designed for, right? And then you gotta pay them a monthly fee. Now, these apps I think are mostly designed for when you're moving, because they're way too expensive monthly to justify having this as an ongoing thing. But if you're moving and you're putting stuff in boxes and you wanna be able to list what's in every box, I can see how that makes sense. Now, I just did this myself. So if you're interested in learning how to do this, by the way, let me know in the comments below. If there's enough interest, I can make a video showing how I set this up. It's pretty easy, but I just used a Google Sheet. And then each tab in the worksheet is a different bin. And so each tab actually has a slightly different URL. And so I just generated a free QR code for each one of those tabs. And so now on my phone, here's what I can do. I open my photo app right here. I walk up to one of these. Here's my camping bin. I scan and it opens up the sheet, and I've got it labeled. I've got the QR code for it also in the sheet, and then I can list the contents. Now, I haven't gone through and added the contents of all these, but one thing I did do is I put the labels on, and when I put the labels on, I also snapped a picture. And so I can also then insert a picture here so that I can just look at the picture and see all the stuff that's in the bin. So not only does it have a label on it, but it has a QR code that goes to a Google Sheet that shows me all the stuff that's in that bin. It's gonna take me a little time to fill that out all the way, but even if I just started high level, which I did on a couple of my bins, for example, let me show you this one. I've got this bin and it's for networking stuff. I've got a whole bunch of Ethernet cables. I've got a modem. I've got a couple data switches, and I've got tools to actually put run my own Ethernet cable and put little ends on it and stuff. And so I just have that here, and I just listed out, these are the things that I put in that bin before I put it up there. And I can add new stuff. I can put the photo in here as well. I can just insert the photo into this spreadsheet. And so now right there in that spreadsheet, when I scan the QR code for that bin, I can see exactly what's in it. And I set it up for free. You can do exactly the same. So if you wanna know how to do that and how I did that, let me know in the comments below. I'd be happy to go ahead and make that video for you. And that's it. Now my garage is set up in a way that can stay organized. And that's what's key, is setting things up in a way where it can actually stay organized. Everybody can clean their garage. You can spend an afternoon cleaning your garage, no big deal. but cleaning it up in a way where it can stay that way, that's the holy grail of garage organization. That's what we're gonna try to make sure happens here. So if I tweak and modify this system, I'll let you know. We'll make an update to this video. If there's anything else in there that you'd like more details on how to do, let me know in the comments. We can talk about it and be happy to help you out. If there are other things that you do for your garage organization that make it better for you, let me know in the comments below. We can all learn and grow together. And if you wanna learn how to do other cool stuff yourself, save yourself a boatload of money and take more responsibility for your own home, that's what this channel is all about. You're gonna wanna check out the other videos here. And yeah, go do that. Go watch another one of these videos. Thanks for joining me today. My name's Ricky and this is Fixter. We'll see you all soon.